Good morning or good afternoon, whatever time you guys are listening to us. Welcome back to another edition of the Layman's AI podcast. I am Adam,
And my name is Brian.
and we want to welcome you guys to episode 39. 39 we're pretty excited about. We once again pivoted topics. But before we get to
Always.
that, yeah, we always do that. I guess that's what's nice about having a bank of episodes ready to go is if we pivot, there's no panicking because if we don't make it in time, we could still run our old episode or the episode we had planned. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, so a little bit of an announcement for our listeners. Brian and I have been working pretty hard to up our social media game, and I am happy to say that there is a Layman's AI LinkedIn page. We're
Hmm.
starting primarily with LinkedIn, though we have social media elsewhere. We're primarily starting with LinkedIn as a possible contact network so that you guys could keep in touch and see what we're doing and possibly engage with us throughout the weeks.
Oh,
And
we love
Brian.
engagement. We love engagement.
We do love engagement. We like it at times when it happens, you
Hmm.
know. And Brian, you've been working on our YouTube account
Hmm.
pretty heavily and hitting it up pretty hard, and
Yep.
I'm enjoying it what you're doing. So
Yes. Yeah, it's basically, I'm just started to get us more into shorts and all our YouTube videos. And yeah, we're just can continue to put content up there. Might start making some general posts up there and everything. But yeah, check out the YouTube video, especially with the
mhm,
episodes where we start to do product demonstrations, where we
yeah,
start doing prompting and to show you kind of like some visuals. It gives some really good visuals,
yes, it
such as
does.
it like if you want to start planning your next Thanksgiving dinner because it's never too early to start planning. That's still one of my favorite episodes. But
I was blown away. And what's funny is that to pivot, one of the best
mhm.
parts about that episode was that was our first introduction, I believe, to Claude projects.
Yes, I actually learned
Yes.
about Claude projects that week. And I'm like, oh wait, this is a really good idea. And I just started like putting it together. I'm like, oh, I can see what we can do with this. And that's where I really got the introduction into Claude projects. And that leads us into tonight's episode,
Hmm.
actually, because if you've listened to us previously, if not, that's okay. We always welcome new listeners to the channel. But this is all about the Claude hype and the fanboys, which we have become kind of fanboys of Claude recently.
Yes, you're more vested than I am in the fanboy status, but I plan to be shortly. I will be. I will be getting the paid account for Claude. I've been very impressed with it. And
Hmm.
truth be told, if you follow the AI news in the AI world like Brian and I do, you're probably not surprised that we're talking about Claude because
Hmm.
everybody is talking about Claude. And of course, by Claude, we do mean Anthropic. They're the company that
Hmm.
owns Claude model. Um, but it seemed like just 2 weeks ago, everything was open claw, or the old moat book,
Oh
that,
yeah.
and that's kind of, well, it hasn't subsided. There's actually a little bit of an update to that situation. But what's
Hmm.
happened is a lot of the people who are really into the AI, specifically the coders and the people who are really into the tech, they're pushing Claude because
Hmm.
Claude's doing stuff and there's proof of it now, and there's layman's proof of it now. Claude's doing stuff that simply can't be replicated at the level of which it's doing. And though it's not a big name amongst laymen, I'm a little surprised it hasn't caught on the way it should at this point. You're dealing with this phenomenal tool that
Hmm.
works very well by all metrics, and it's getting a lot of good hype and good praise from it. And
Yeah.
Brian, I know you've used it longer than I certainly have, and I know you're a
Hmm.
fanboy for sure.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so tell me a little bit about
It's
your experience with Claude so far.
um well, my whole thing with Claude is it's a very carefully crafted model. You can
Hmm.
tell
Yeah.
that they put a lot of thought into this. For example, when I would have fun with some LLMs, I asked Google Gemini any question whatsoever. It wasn't anything in particular. And after it gave me the response, I'm like, all right, respond to me with a little more bro. And it says, all right, bro, here's your answer, bro. Yeah, bro. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. I asked Anthropic the same thing. And its response, literally, I can't remember the exact words, but it said, I understand you're trying to be humor, but I'm designed to be more professional. I'm like, oh, you're more professional about the whole thing. So you can tell they have like more guardrails built in and everything. So
Hmm.
that's a very interesting one right there. And another thing I've, started to notice about it is it creates documents very well too. You could start typing some stuff in and say, okay, give me a synopsis, and you can do that. I'm like, okay, now give me a text file that provides this, and it does a really good job with the text files and everything. I'm sure a lot of the other models are doing, pretty well too, but that was sort of my first introduction into Claude and everything.
Right.
And once I got into the projects, I'm like, okay, this is really helpful because I can load all the documents I want for a specific project. And I immediately thought, my engineer mind goes in there. I'm like, okay, I can do, machine testing. I can put in all the databases. If I'm running a machine that runs test after test, I can put in a full database based on what pressures, temperatures, etc. this machine was displaying at certain times and everything. And if I just load all these databases into my project, I can do a really cool analysis. That's just kind of the engineer in me. But the projects was really what sold me on Claude personally.
hmm Now, since that time, we will say that ChatGPT, Google, they have something similar to projects along with what Claude has. But Claude has recently really been hitting some grand slams. And I know Brian and I said that we felt 2026 was going to be the year that Google becomes the forefront and the front runner. And right
Hmm.
now, I would have to say we're wrong
Hmm.
at the moment. Now, it's still
Possibly,
early. Yeah.
possibly.
We're still in February, so a lot can happen in a short amount of time. But with that said, Claude came out of the gates swinging in 2026. I keep calling it Claude,
Hmm.
but I mean Anthropic.
Yeah.
And there is something right now that has happened recently called the Anthropic effect. And this does impact the layman's. This is something that you need to keep an eye on because when Claude Cowork, which is a feature we're going to be talking about tonight,
Hmm.
when Claude Cowork, when its capabilities expanded, it impacted the stock market. It sort
Hmm.
of was a wake up call. And I'm going to give you some examples here. And Brian, maybe you can help me out as I'm reading off my screen.
Yeah.
SaaS, I don't know what that means. Capital
Software as a service.
Software as a service stocks dropped
Yeah.
sharply after it was announced. And then
Hmm.
this is the other big one. Investors feared AI agents are going to replace AI agents replacing subscription software. So much so that companies like Salesforce, Workday, Thomson Reuters, and LegalZoom were impacted. And in one day, the S&P 500 software index fell by 4%.
Yeah, that's significant,
That's a
really, if you look
lot
at it.
of money. And all it was this is what Claude Cowork can do.
Yes, but I will say I don't share that fear, to be honest with you. I do not share the fear that software as a service or AI agents are going to replace subscription software. I think there's still a place for subscription software services because a lot of these companies are going to lock down a lot of their software from
Mhm.
AI agents or LLMs from using it and everything. It may it's going to change things for sure
Yeah,
because
yes, I agree with you to a point. I
mhm,
don't think fully it's going anywhere, but is it going to
no.
be impacted drastically? Absolutely.
Yeah,
There won't be
there's
as many in 2 years as there
Yeah, I
is
mean,
now.
yeah, there's a big argument, and ironically, people in Anthropic believe that coding is going to be replaced by vibe coding entirely, because right now they're
Okay.
saying that all of Claude's coding is now done by vibe coding, whereas a lot of other tech professionals kind of disagree with that. They just said the workflow is going to change because of AI. I'm a little more in the latter because when Claude says that, or people from Anthropic say that, they're using Claude to basically add more features or work on itself, essentially. And when your database is strictly how your model is, and then you're using your model to sort of improve itself,
hmm
it's going to be a lot easier because I'm sure they have some sort of closed system in place and everything. And if you have your model trained and you're working on it to just work on itself, that's going to cut down on hallucinations like a million times
Yeah.
over. You're basically changing your own code and fixing your own code. So now it knows its own coding structure. So it's going to be a lot easier for it to add code to itself, essentially. So I don't think it's all going away personally,
hmm
but you're going to see average coders become very, very good software developers, in my opinion,
That makes sense.
because of this.
I mean,
Yeah.
that does make sense given that we've seen a guy who was just recently the guy who did OpenClaw, I believe was not a coder, and even though he made some
Hmm.
mistakes, he was still able to create a very large product. So much
Hmm.
so that OpenAI is now partnering with them. It's probably an episode in
Uh,
itself. Another
yeah, I think
web
that's a bit.
connection. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a big business move right there because I
yeah.
think OpenAI is sort of hiccups and kind of bumps in the road have been documented, but
Hmm.
but the whole thing is though it's going to take coding. Um, like coding is only a part of software development. It's a major part of software development, but it's only a part of it. So software developers and engineers are still going to be useful.
Hmm.
I'm saying that to hype myself up because I'm an engineer, but we find ways to use new tools because we don't use slide rules anymore. We use calculators. So,
Right, and I'm starting to think calculators might be going by the wayside, and you're just literally talking to something like the brain of an AI.
hmm, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to dive into some of the features of Claude, and we're going to try to explain to our listeners in layman's terms why it's a big deal right now and what it offers.
Hmm.
So the first thing I want to use, I'm going to use the analogy of like a person coming together, or maybe even a robot coming together to make something like a recipe or something like that. Okay. The first thing I want to talk about is the brain. And yes, I had some help from AI in describing this. But the first
Hmm.
thing I want to talk about is the brain. Claude's brain is Opus 4.6. So
Hmm.
Opus 4.6, that's the general LLM that you interact with in the normal way that you would interact with ChatGPT 5.2, or you would Google Gemini. Is it Gemini 3 now? Or is that not out yet?
Oh, geez, I can't
Yeah,
even
don't
keep
worry about
track.
that. Don't worry about that, Gemini. Google, you need to pick it up a little bit. We should have known the answer to this one. Okay.
Yeah, Gemini 3. I
Gemini
just
3.
took a
Okay, so
look. Yeah.
those are your LLMs. Right now, according to the metrics, and this is metrics that I don't even understand every single one of these categories, and there are some flaws with these metrics, but nevertheless, they're important metrics in the industry. Opus 4.6 is king right now.
Hmm.
It's a smart resource for allocation. It does adaptive thinking, and it handles coding, analysis, and multi-step logic, and it does all three of those at a very high rate.
Yes.
So not only you're basically saying that if you're you have this AI product and it happens to have the best functioning brain right now of all the other AIs. And Brian,
Hmm.
you've probably interacted with Claude Opus 4.6, and there's other models too within there. I think there's a Sonnet,
Yeah.
which is very popular. I think that's one of the popular writing tools or assistant writing tools, I think,
Sonnet is their standard.
is the standard. Okay.
Yeah, that's their like kind of workhorse, essentially. And Opus is their deep thinking model. This takes up a lot of your credits usage.
Hmm.
I have run into this. It actually has a separate usage bar for how much you can use Opus depending on your plan. And it says you can use Opus this much, and it uses up this much of your total processing power. Because I think this is another because that's another kind of area where I think Claude sort of looked ahead of time is like we're not going to waste money just allowing unlimited processing power or credits or anything like that. So that's where they started to limit it and everything. So that's how I felt they could develop the model more slowly. But it's neither here or there. But I actually had a conversation with Claude about their three different models and everything. And Sonnet is actually going to be good for basically most of your tasks. They said most people won't even need to use Opus, essentially. Opus is their like deep thinker. They're very, very deep thinker.
Yeah.
And I kind of put some use case examples to Claude, asking it, what would I use this for? If you're just kind of using it to code and using it to help you write code, Sonnet is just fine. As you're writing line by line and
That's good
everything.
to know. That's really
Yeah.
good to know. Yeah,
Yeah,
because you're not
and
wasting as many tokens thinking you have to use Opus.
yes, that was my mistake too, that I thought I had to use Opus for, since I got the Pro plan now, I'm like, oh, I'm going to use Opus because Opus is only available through the Pro plan, but you don't need to. Where Opus kind of shines is like deep analysis.
Okay.
So if you have an entire program written out in code and everything, you can use Opus to really analyze it and say, okay, I need to find some bugs in this software, or I need to find this and that. And it really goes through a deep analysis of what you ask it and everything. And that's really where Opus shines, is any sort of like deep analysis. I also put another kind of thought out there. If I was going to write a trilogy of books, I think it was, and I wanted to find plot holes, you could like load up all the manuscripts, all your books, and it'll run through all the books and try to find like plot holes for you,
Okay.
so you can fix those ahead of time. I know a lot of authors are like believing that AI is the devil right now, which I think it can be misused to eliminate human creativity, but I wouldn't be against it. But that's Opus and Sonnet in a nutshell. Haiku is trash. I'm not even going to talk about that.
I was gonna say I don't know. I know it's there, but nobody really talks
I, I,
about
I,
it. I'm assuming
I
most of our listeners, Sonnet is going to do exactly what you want it to do
yeah.
90% of the time. When you get to the higher level where you need to do multiple steps, you may want to consider using Opus at that point, should you
Hmm.
even have it available to you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so what we know is Opus is the brain.
Hmm.
Now, we have two hands in this case. The
Hmm.
robot, us, whatever analogy we're using, we have two hands. One hand is Claude code, and
Hmm.
the other hand is Claude co-work. There are slight differences between the two. All
Yes.
right. And you even asked Claude what was the differences between them. Is that accurate?
I just kind of asked like a little explanation before it of anything. We'll start with Claude Code, because this is
Yes,
sort of the
that's where
meat
I
and
wanted to start
potatoes and
too.
everything.
Claude Code's the
Um,
big one right now for those of you that are listening. It's real big right now. This is the one that's getting a lot of traction.
yeah, it's basically an agentic coding tool that goes through your code base and everything, and you could use it to analyze your code, write your code, test your code, and everything. Um, And the best example I can think of to use this, when you load a program onto your computer, like you download the program and you get the file and you extract the file, blah blah blah, and you see all those different folders with all these different files and all these different extensions, but you really only need to run this one file here to run the setup,
Hmm.
essentially.
Yeah.
All those files have something in them, and they all kind of call each other and kind of intermingle back and forth. So you can use it in like let's say you change something in one of those files and everything. Now you can say, okay, I changed this in this file right here. Can you go through all these other files within my program here and see where this change affects those other files and everything? So it could run through all those other sort of file calls and everything, and it'll say, oh, these two right here are going to be affected in this way, and you can kind of make it a fix there because if you ever done coding, when you stare at the lines over and over again, lines and lines of code, it all starts to look like the Matrix. When you
I
see Neo
uh,
looking at the Matrix.
yeah, I will share with you this past Friday night I attended my first for free.
Hmm.
It was basically how to start using Claude Code and things to consider. And I was in a room where I was very intimidated by people
Hmm.
in there with the
Hmm.
questions they were asking. The person who was given the presentation even intimidated me, even though she was speaking in plain English.
Hmm.
But I am determined to go back. I am going to keep learning this stuff. There was some neat things. I've got a lot of questions I need to ask you some other time. But the big thing for takeaway for me, when you start saying Claude Code, you're talking about agentic AI.
Hmm.
And an agentic AI that works very well when the proper parameters are put in, which is what is easier to do in Claude Code.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the hand, whatever hand Claude Code is. If you're right-handed, that's your Claude Code. It's
Hmm.
able to do stuff, and it's able to do stuff on its own. So
Yeah.
and you do need to have some good coding experience at first to get this thing set up. I'm learning some ways around that, but it's still doing basic stuff. Even the coding stuff that I'm trying to learn, it's only so that I can do basic stuff that I can do with Claude Cowork anyways.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean, with this, even if you're going to use Claude Code and AI code, I would still learn coding. I've been a
Yeah.
big advocate. If you're going to use AI for your job, you need to learn the basics of the job first. It's like going back to the addition tables and the multiplication tables that we used to do in school,
Hmm.
and you study those over and over and over again, but they helped you use a calculator better. Like you're now more
Right.
proficient in using a calculator because you have these basics drilled into your head. Same thing with Claude Code. I would learn coding if you're going to use it and everything.
Hmm.
And you know, this actually, I kind of looked at a few things as well. Um, it does connect to a GitHub repository. For those that don't know, basically that's where you put all your code files and everything like that. So let's say you and I are working on a program together, and I start writing this section of code, and you start writing another section of code.
Hmm.
Um, but they're two different things, and I want to try my own little branch or what have you. And I go into the repository, I can start a branch, you can start a branch. And if I completely fail, I can cut my branch out, or and you succeed, you could put your branch in, and then we can kind of merge it all together. Um,
Yeah,
I know
GitHub seems to be the collaboration tool amongst
it's a,
coders.
yeah, essentially, it's like a repository for all the lines of code that you write, essentially, and all the
Okay.
resources that you use for a program. I know I got off the layman's track there. Thanks for bringing me back, Adam.
No problem.
Um, but like you can really you can connect it to that repository and what have you. And also, what a lot of people don't know is if you are coding, you can use your coding terminal, your native coding terminal to link to this.
Okay.
And
That was my experience this past Friday was what the heck's a coding terminal? And
yes,
then
it
people were
took me a while
saying
to
there,
learn that.
yeah, it does appear to be a way that which you could kind of talk plain English to
Yeah.
code. If that makes, that's the
Somewhat.
way I would,
Yeah.
that's what my takeaway was on Friday. So,
Yeah, somewhat, but it does link to your coding terminals. Versus Terminal is one of the popular ones that's been used. Google Colab is another online coding terminal and everything, but it does actually link to those, which is a nice feature for Google or
okay.
Claude Code, I should say.
All right. And then, so for layman, what this means is when you learn that stuff, it's going to make you better, run it better. But if
Hmm.
you are a layman, chances are you're going to want to start by using Cowork.
Hmm.
Cowork can be downloaded to your computer and you give it access to whatever you say. So always proceed with caution, though I feel it's a lot safer with Claude than it is with OpenClaw. That's not to say don't try OpenClaw if you feel comfortable with it. I'm still not there, and I'm still not
Hmm.
there where I'm letting Claude come onto my computer yet, but I think I will eventually. But it can do things on your desktop. It can do things like reorganize your files, better organize them, but you got to give it access to do that, which, as we talked about in previous episodes, there could be some catches there. But it doesn't
Hmm.
appear to be the case with Claude. Everything appears to be working pretty well. So I guess if I was to do my
Yeah.
analogy, if I'm right-handed, Claude Code is my right hand that's doing the work on its
Hmm.
own naturally. Co-work is more like if I'm going to hammer a nail, I got to hold it in place, make sure
Hmm.
that it's there so that my right hand can get it. And that's my sad analogy that I came up with right there. But Claude Cowork is very popular. It will help you with your day-to-day tasks in your office. If you're a layman,
Hmm.
you have your own business. For everyday professionals, and frankly, I think Claude Cowork is the one that's scaring people more than Claude Code at the moment. Even though Claude Code's agentic and Claude Cowork, though agentic isn't as agentic, I think that's what's scaring people because that's the one that people are alluding to that can over time make a person's production so well they don't need to hire another person.
Yeah, I mean, but if you think about it, if we're producing so much, your company wants to grow, right? So you're
Absolutely.
you're gonna find more work to do. I've
Hmm.
been in companies where they just can't take on new customers
Yeah.
because like they just don't have the people. And if this sort of Claude Cowork helps you out a little bit, and suddenly this one person is doing the work of one and a half people, then you can take on more customers and your company can grow.
Yep.
So, don't think of it as it's gonna replace you, just it's gonna enhance you. And I think that's kind of the point we like constantly make in every episode almost. But what this like kind of cowork can do, I can just kind of look it up. It actually helps work with Excel spreadsheets and it can like kind of do some PowerPoint presentations, format documents and everything. And there's also all kinds of plugins and everything. What kind of plugins do we have with this?
There's tons.
But Yeah, I shouldn't even look. There's tons of plugins. Let's just not start
Yeah,
reading. But
just trust us on this one.
yeah, but now it could find those mistakes and everything. And how many times have you gone through an Excel spreadsheet and you're going through data point, data point, data point, and all of a sudden like you forgot something or you mess something up.
Brian, it seemed like it was forever, but full disclosure, I now do not analyze data in an Excel spreadsheet without an AI tool helping me.
Hmm.
I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure I understand everything. And I'll tell you what, all these LLMs are really good at dissecting data in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, then that's kind of the big thing right there is massive data sheets right there. Th
Hmm.
This is where AI shines is just like running through the data points and
Yeah.
everything. And if you're using Cowork to sort of analyze data, then that's going to put you into a big advantage right there. Now, with that being said, you got to be careful. This isn't like quite to the level of OpenClaw, but you do give it access to files and everything,
Hmm.
and it can make changes to your files and what have
Yeah.
you.
Uh,
So
a
I would
you
almost dedicate, sorry to cut you off, but I'd almost dedicate a folder just to Claude Cowork
which you can
and
do.
everything. Yes.
That's actually a recommendation from a guy who this is what I was saying on YouTube, who did say he said clean up my desktop because he's got like everybody, he's got files and folders and this and that, and
Mm-hmm.
he asked it to rename, reorganize so that everything has a purpose. Well,
Mm.
it was great, but Claude, for whatever reason, used numbers to organize everything.
Well, what is the purpose? A purpose to a human is different than a purpose to a robot.
Exactly. So he was a little not mad, but he said he failed in terms of explaining what he wanted to the AI device,
Mm.
which he's right. He messed up on that. Should have said I want them named in English appropriate so I can understand it quickly. And it named it like 10.2101 or something like that. And then the other one was 10.2104.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't even necessarily in order, and he didn't know what was what.
Yeah, in
But that's
robot
possible.
code, yeah,
Yeah.
in robot code that makes perfect sense. In
Maybe.
human speak that makes us just more confusing.
Hmm.
So yeah, you definitely have to worry about that. And yeah, and that's kind of like the nice thing if you just make like one dedicated folder for Claude Cowork to do, and
Yep.
you just feed it as you want to. And this is kind of where model training comes into play, is that model is only going to work as well as what you feed into it. So that's
Correct.
something you got to be careful there.
And I will tell you, going on to the next part, this ties into this. If you're starting with Claude Cowork, I would do what Brian suggested and what others have suggested. Start with a small folder, maybe on your
Hmm.
desktop for access. But another key component to what Claude does that even though others have this seems to work really well, and that's what's called skills.
Hmm.
So the skills would be like the recipe book that you're using if you're cooking in the analogy that we're using. It's basically a reusable workflow. So
Hmm.
instead of reprompting all the time, which I catch myself doing a lot with ChatGPT, and
Hmm.
instead of reprompting all the time, boom, you've got it. Say, run this. You can name it and say, run the analysis skill that I asked you to do, whatever. And it's not even that long. You could say, run
Hmm.
skill like 10.4, and it'll know what it is based on how you have talked to it.
Yeah.
And it's turning Claude into specialists. Like, and some of the examples were like project planners, newsletter writing, email crafting. Obviously, that's always a
Hmm.
big thing. I mean, everybody hates emails, and it's getting to the point now. I'm convinced people aren't even reading them. So
Yeah,
they weren't
definitely.
reading them to begin with, and now they're still not. So
Yeah, that's yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it. Think of it from an engineer standpoint, if you're, testing cookie cutter machines
yeah,
and you're getting that data and everything, you could, have a whole process to look at the data, analyze the data, and tell me what you know, blah blah blah. And you could just, run the real life test, take the data, feed it there, and said, okay, run this workflow for me and tell me what you think about how this machine performed.
yeah,
And you can just kind of keep redoing that over and over again, and it could catch things that the human can't. So that's sort of where you need to take a look at it there.
hmm,
But no, it's useful. But
it
like I
is.
said, it's only as useful as you make it,
Yeah.
essentially.
So there's three levels of the skills. There's a metadata, which is like it knows when you want to use it, which it can learn on its own, which is really
Hmm.
cool. It'll say, "Oh, he wants me to use this skill right here," so it'll do it. It does instructions, a step-by-step process, which is
Hmm.
pretty standard, but
Yeah.
good to know. And it does do resources such as like templates and scripts and assets that are already available. It could pull those in as well.
Hmm.
So some of the categories that it's been listed in is like asset creation for like presentations, designs, workflow automation. As you can imagine, this is going to become a big part of onboarding and even doing audits, which make total sense. An audit is
Hmm.
find the mistakes or find things we're not doing right based on this data that's right here. AI is going to be fantastic at that.
Yeah.
And Claude is co-work is going to help you out tremendously with that.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
even with like self-auditing before the real auditors come in,
uh,
just to kind of CYA a little bit. Uh,
Correct. Yeah.
so that's something that you can definitely use it there. Tool enhancement, better use of connected apps. That's
Yeah.
going to be, who knows what apps are going to come of this too. If you think about it, people might just start creating apps, specifically for Claude Cowork and
Well,
to
that's a good
be
point.
maximized with Claude Cowork.
Yeah.
So, we're looking at a whole new world of possibilities here.
We are, and I think the big takeaway for me, because to prep for this episode, we analyzed 13 different sources,
Hmm.
and what I've learned is the big takeaway is you can basically build your own AI employee or assistant with Cowork
Hmm.
all by itself, which does not require the coding background that you may need for Claude Code. So
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I still think Claude Code is a more powerful tool, but I don't think laymen, for the most part, laymen's that are listening to us don't have a use for it at this time. That's not to say that's not going to be the case 6 months from now, but
Hmm.
co-work seems to be what you'd be more likely to use it for.
Yeah, I think Cowork is going to be their big deal one
Yeah.
right there and everything. So yeah, that's kind of where I sort of look at, I would say probably where the big money is.
Yeah.
Code is going to be, Cloud Code is going to be big too. But it's not going to be as big as Cowork. I don't think so.
Not right
Uh,
away, no.
yeah, but uh, pretty exciting stuff. Actually, I know I've been fanboying Claude a lot
Yeah.
with all its capabilities. I've hardly scratched the surface of
Uh,
what, all these tools are, and I want to start coding with Claude Code now.
mhm. I
So,
I didn't understand what was going on Friday when I was in there, but a lot of the people that did understand what was going on, Brian, they looked like they were having a nice time.
hmm
I'm sitting there on a
definitely,
Friday night just having a coffee going, what am I doing here? But you know what? I'm going back. I'm going back just
yeah.
because it was a good experience, but also I do think, like you said, the more I learn about code, and I know some terms now that I didn't know when we first started this podcast, I,
hmm
the more you know, the better you could prompt. The more I
Yeah.
know the memory is going to be a very important if I'm creating my own agent. The memory system that I think that's an MD file, MD, no,
Markdown.
Markdown.
Yeah, Markdown files. I've actually
Do I have that right?
when I start doing projects. Within Claude projects itself. And, for me, it's just text files, but I always have it create markdown files to put in as resources because it even stated it does a better job at analyzing markdown files. You would think it looks like gibberish, a lot of it,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah,
but
hieroglyphics. Yeah.
yeah, but machines love markdown files and they like different files. So, just putting like understanding that and putting that into perspective, now you can feed it better information to when you use it in a project. And once you understand how the machines actually work, you can start using them better because you tell them how to think. But either way, also Anthropic Academy, they have their
Yes.
own sort of courses and everything. So if you want to learn Claude Code, they have a Claude Code course that you can take and everything, and they have all kinds of courses. I'm just kind of looking at them right now. Claude Code, Claude 101, AI Fluency, building with the Claude Code API, uh, introduction to model context protocol, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, they have a lot of courses, more than I thought of.
Yeah,
But
there that book I was telling you about earlier, the PDFs that
hmm
they have available for layman's, it
hmm
was just one after the other. So and I feel kind of like shame on me is I I think OpenAI probably has something similar. I'm assuming Google does too.
Hmm.
In fact, Google, I think, has a ton of how to use Gemini courses
Oh
all
yeah.
over the place.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I bet they have like so many too. So, not just to say that Claude is the only one, but this is just kind of our little fanboy episode right here. But yeah,
It's fanboy with an asterisk and a purpose because Claude is changing the game.
yeah, definitely.
Anthropic and Claude is changing the AI game right now. They're,
Hmm.
they are now, as you say in the movie Spaceballs. They are
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
So
they were
yeah,
very careful and methodical the way they came up,
and
the
it's
way they
paying
were
off.
climbing and everything. Like I know OpenAI was a big player, like they were one of the originals and everything. They were the flashy ones with ChatGPT. Google Gemini, of course, everybody knows Google, so they kind of had their own thing and they were just trying to throw theirs together. And Musk had XAI that he tried to throw his hat in the ring and what have you. But Anthropic really slow rolled this a little
Yeah.
bit, I think. And I think it all goes back to like what we were saying before was they kind of limited usage or what have you. So that might have had spent money better. But
I think they were wiser and more purposeful in their decision making, is what it's looking like at this time.
yeah, definitely. But yeah, either way, I think that about wraps it up for the evening. I'd like to give everybody a big thank you for taking your time out of your day to listen to us. My name is Brian.
And I'm Adam.
And you have been listening to the Layman's AI, and we will see you next time.